It all starts with a surprising fact. Every person alive owes their existence to an unbroken chain of ancestors who managed to protect one of nature's most vulnerable creatures, a human newborn. Imagine entering the world unable to walk, speak, feed yourself, or even keep your own body warm. While you are completely defenseless, the dangers around you are very real. Predators recognize weakness instantly, yet generation after generation, our ancestors found ways to help fragile infants survive long enough to become parents themselves. If just one link in that chain had failed, you would never have existed. That realization makes the story of early human parenting deeply personal. It's fascinating to realize that humanity's greatest survival tool wasn't strength or speed. It was cooperation. Every generation inherited not only genes, but also knowledge, care, and shared responsibility. Sometimes the greatest achievements are the quiet ones that happen every single day without anyone noticing. Comment 1. If thinking about your ancestors in this way gives you a whole new appreciation for how unlikely your own existence really is, the answer to how ancient humans protected their children isn't simply a collection of primitive parenting tricks. Instead, it reveals one of the most advanced social systems evolution ever produced. Long before written history, people developed behaviors centered on cooperation, trust, and constant caregiving. Ironically, many of these practices have faded from modern life, even though they shaped our species for hundreds of thousands of years. This isn't a flaw in nature. It's the result of one of evolution's most remarkable compromises. Humans developed exceptionally large brains, but there's a problem. A fully developed infant brain would require a skull too large to safely pass through the birth canal. Evolution solved this by shifting much of brain development until after birth. In other words, humans arrive in the world much earlier in their developmental journey than nearly any other primate. At birth, the human brain is only about 1/4 of its eventual adult size, while a newborn chimpanzee's brain is already close to half its mature size. The consequence is enormous. Years of critical brain growth happen outside the womb while the child remains completely dependent on caregivers. Scientists often describe this challenge as the obstetric dilemma. It means a human infant has virtually no chance of surviving alone. Our species was never designed for isolated parenting. Human reproduction itself depends on social support. That changes the entire question. The real mystery isn't how one mother managed to raise a child. It's how entire communities organize themselves to make childhood possible. One of the biggest lessons from evolution is that intelligence isn't measured only by brain size. It's also reflected in how well individuals work together. Our ancestors didn't overcome nature by acting alone. They succeeded because they learned to depend on one another. For countless generations, survival wasn't an individual achievement. It was a community project. The familiar saying, "It takes a village to raise a child," wasn't originally a figure of speech. For early humans, it described a biological reality. Anthropologists believe cooperative child rearing may have been one of the defining advantages that allowed Homo sapiens to thrive while other human relatives disappeared. This system, known as cooperative breeding, spread the responsibility of caring for children across an entire group, instead of placing the burden almost entirely on one parent. Unlike most primates, where mothers carry nearly all childcare responsibilities, hunter-gatherer societies shared those duties among fathers, grandparents, siblings, relatives, and even unrelated members of the community. Looking after children wasn't considered extra help. It was simply how society functioned. Grandmothers were especially important. Researchers even developed what's known as the grandmother hypothesis. Proposed by anthropologist Kristen Hawkes during the 1990s, the idea suggests that human menopause may have evolved because older women contributed more to the survival of their descendants by helping raise grandchildren than by continuing to have children of their own. Instead of investing energy into more pregnancies, experienced grandmothers provided food, knowledge, protection, and childcare. Studies of traditional societies consistently show that children with living maternal grandmothers often have significantly better chances of surviving early childhood. But grandmothers weren't the only helpers. Aunts, uncles, older siblings, and trusted adults all played active roles. Babies were regularly held, carried, comforted, fed, and watched by multiple caregivers throughout the day. Modern studies of the Aka hunter-gatherers in Central Africa illustrate just how involved these communities remain. Fathers spend nearly half of their time within arm's reach of their infants, a level of daily involvement that exceeds what is commonly observed in many industrialized societies today. Ancient children didn't grow up relying on only two exhausted parents. They were surrounded by a network of people whose attention created multiple layers of protection. Communities become strongest when responsibility is shared instead of carried by one person alone. Whether raising children or facing life's challenges, resilience often comes from many caring hands rather than extraordinary individuals. Sometimes the most powerful innovation in human history wasn't a tool or a weapon. It was the decision to never leave someone to struggle by themselves. Another part of early childhood that often surprises modern audiences is breastfeeding. For our ancestors, it looked very different from what many people consider typical today. In traditional societies, and among our closest primate relatives, nursing commonly continued for 2 to 4 years, and sometimes even longer. That may sound unusual now, yet from an evolutionary perspective, stopping much earlier would have been the exception rather than the rule. Even today, the World Health Organization recommends breastfeeding until at least age 2 and beyond when possible. Frequency mattered just as much as duration. Hunter-gatherer mothers often nursed their babies many times throughout the day, sometimes several times within a single hour during infancy. Breast milk did far more than satisfy hunger. It comforted the child, helped regulate stress, strengthened the immune system, and naturally delayed the mother's return to fertility. As a result, births were commonly spaced about 3 or 4 years apart, giving each child time to become stronger before another newborn arrived. That spacing was no accident. It reflected a rhythm that balanced the needs of both mother and child, caring for one completely dependent infant while traveling, gathering food, and surviving in unpredictable environments already demanded tremendous energy. Nature often solves complex problems through balance instead of speed. Sometimes slowing down creates stronger foundations than rushing ahead ever could. Comment 2. If this changes the way you think about how human families evolved over time. Breastfeeding wasn't always limited to biological mothers either. Across many ancient cultures, women sometimes nursed children who weren't their own. This practice, known as wet nursing, helped orphaned infants survive, supported mothers during illness, and strengthened relationships throughout the community. In a very real sense, nourishment became something the entire group could provide, not just a single individual. That level of cooperation created stronger bonds between families while giving vulnerable children additional chances to survive. Now imagine the daily life of a hunter-gatherer mother living thousands of years ago. She still needed to collect food, travel long distances across rough landscapes, avoid dangerous animals, and protect herself from changing weather. At the same time, she carried a baby who couldn't regulate body temperature, couldn't escape danger, and couldn't survive even a short period without care. Leaving an infant behind simply wasn't an option. The solution our ancestors developed was remarkably effective: constant physical contact. What we now call baby-wearing appears to have been the normal condition for nearly all human history. Infants spent most of their waking hours against the body of a caregiver, while adults continued their daily activities. Human biology reflects this ancient pattern. Newborns naturally grasp with surprising strength when something touches their palms. This instinctive reflex is believed to be an evolutionary remnant that once helped babies cling securely to caregivers. Modern research also supports the value of close physical contact. Skin-to-skin care helps stabilize heart rate, breathing, body temperature, and stress hormones. Babies who are carried frequently tend to cry far less, not because they've been spoiled, but because their biological expectations are being met. Studies comparing cultures have found that infants who spend much of the day being carried cry dramatically less than those who spend extended periods alone. From an evolutionary perspective, isolation signals danger. Crying becomes an alarm designed to restore contact. Ancient babies were rarely left by themselves. They slept close to caregivers, traveled with them, and experienced almost continuous human touch. Looking back doesn't mean rejecting modern parenting. Instead, it reminds us that many infant behaviors developed in environments filled with constant closeness. Understanding where those instincts came from helps explain why they still appear today. Eventually, every child reaches the point where milk alone is no longer enough. This is where ancient feeding practices begin to sound unfamiliar. There were no carefully prepared jars of baby food or specially designed feeding spoons. Families relied on whatever plants, meat, fish, eggs, or other foods had been gathered that day. One of the most widespread methods was pre-mastication. Adults chewed food until it became soft before transferring it directly to the infant. Although this practice seems unhygienic by modern standards, scientists now recognize that it may also have introduced beneficial microbes that helped shape developing immune systems. Similar behavior is still observed among chimpanzees, suggesting that it reaches deep into our evolutionary past. Children also ate soft, nutrient-rich foods whenever they became available. Bone marrow supplied concentrated calories. Mashed plants, eggs, fish, and tender pieces of meat provided a surprisingly varied diet. Evidence from ancient teeth tells an interesting story. Hunter-gatherer children generally experienced fewer cavities and often showed signs of better nutrition than many early farming communities that depended heavily on grain-based diets. It turns out that dietary diversity offered advantages long before nutrition science could explain why. one lesson appears again and again throughout human history. Flexibility often beats abundance. A varied way of living can be more valuable than having endless amounts of just one thing. Perhaps the greatest surprise, however, comes when night falls. For almost all of human history, babies did not sleep alone. Across hunter-gatherer societies and most traditional cultures, infants remained in close physical contact with caregivers throughout the night. Sleeping beside family members wasn't considered a parenting philosophy. It was simply normal life. Today, discussions about co-sleeping are understandably shaped by important safety concerns related to soft mattresses, pillows, impaired caregivers, and other modern risks. Those concerns should always be taken seriously. Yet ancestral sleeping environments were very different, typically involving firm sleeping surfaces, attentive caregivers, and conditions unlike many modern homes. Researchers have documented several developmental benefits associated with safe, close sleeping arrangements, including more stable body temperature, steadier breathing, increased nighttime nursing, and longer breastfeeding duration. Anthropologist James McKenna and other researchers have also explored the possibility that an adult's breathing and movement may help support an infant's own developing breathing patterns during early life. While research continues, the broader picture remains consistent. Human babies evolved expecting to spend the night close to other people. For our ancestors, closeness wasn't a luxury. It was simply another layer of protection woven into everyday life.